Hi there, I'm April Sawtelle and welcome to my channel. Today what I'm going to be doing is a really simple project. I'm going to be making a quilt with 10-inch squares. I'm going to be using up my stash and I'm going to be using up some scraps that I have. I'm going to be making my quilt top 90 by 100. When I get done, my quilt's going to be about 88 inches across and 97 inches down. I'm going to be using 9 blocks across and 10 blocks down, and my blocks are 10 inches each. I really wanted to make this quilt because I have a bunch of fabrics that I don't seem to ever grab very often. So I really wanted to grab them. Plus, I wanted to use up some scraps along with this. Let me show you what I did. So I just started grabbing a bunch of blocks that I had already made. They're not really turned into blocks yet. They're just pieces of fabric that have been cut off, different lengths of quilts that I've made, the bottoms of the quilts when I've trimmed things up, stuff like that. I really just wanted to use that up. I really didn't have a big color theme in mind because this is really more scrappy. I just wanted it to look nice together. So let me just show you. So these have already been pieced together somewhere along the line. So I'm going to take pieces like this, and at first I'm going to be grabbing for things that are 10 inches or bigger because I know I want to use 10 inches. I'm just going to eye it, but like this block here, I'll just start laying out anything that I have that I know is like 10 inches or more. This was just cut off the bottom of something. And like this, I'm just going to continue to do that until I get a nice pile of colors. So like this piece, for instance, I'll just cut this and I will sew like this piece to this piece so I can get a 10-inch block. Today I'm not doing a whole entire quilt. I'm only just going to show you the quilt top and how it comes out. But I will show you that this is going to be the backing for the quilt because I'm going to have a lot of greens in this quilt. Well, I've kind of wanted to have one fabric be the more of the focal point. Like I want this one to stick out the most. I just want this to offset everything that I'm going to be doing here. This is going to be the fabric that I'm going to just continue to use throughout the whole quilt. And what I did is I went over to my fabric stash. And I wanted to pick out some fabrics that I just don't typically use. I just wanted to use those up. So I went and I grabbed a bunch of pieces. I want to use this up. So I tried not to grab stuff that had too much yardage because I only want a couple of squares of each. I didn't want to cut really into a big piece of yardage that I might use for some other project. My goal is just to use up a bunch of fabric. Some of the pieces I have that are lined up on a shelf and they're color coordinated. But some of them really are what some people would call scraps. I keep them there because I think they're very pretty and they're bigger than the scraps I typically use. I typically use a smaller scrap. Like these would be scraps. So I wouldn't call 1/8 of a yard a scrap. I would put that on my shelf. I would just fold it and put it with the color of the fabric. I'm trying to use up some of that fabric. That's the smaller pieces that are on the shelf and that I don't really use much. So let's just move them off the shelf and get them into a quilt and get them used up. That's what I've done. There were a couple of times that I had fabric on the shelf, like this piece, for instance. I might have to sew this together to get my 10-inch square. I might have to sew a couple pieces together. But this is nicely folded and it looks pretty on the shelf with all the fabric. But I want to use it up because it's not something I'm going to typically use. Same as this. Like this fabric is not really anything I would ever really use in a quilt, but it's going to look nice in this quilt. I'd like to get this out of my sewing room and I'd like to get this into a quilt. So that's what I did. Not quite scraps, but not quite scraps in my book, but scraps to lots and lots of quilters. Like this, for instance, this isn't anything I really will ever use in a quilt, but it's going to look nice in this quilt. This was probably a curtain. I can see the seam in it, and I got this, I'm sure, at some yard sale or an estate sale. So I'm very happy to use this up. So I don't really have any order of how many of each I'm going to cut. I might cut 2 of one or 4 of one. I just know I'd like to have a little variety of fabric in this. I've got my 10-inch ruler. I'll cut out a bunch of blocks out of my fabric so I have a nice stack. In this quilt, I'm going to need 9 across and 10 down. So I need 90 blocks altogether. So however I come up with that, I'm going to add a bunch of 10-inch of these green squares in it. So I'll probably cut like 20 of these blocks out so I can put about 2 in each row. It may not end up that way, but that way, even if I have extras, then that will go in my scrap bin. But with my idea in my head, I'm gonna probably have 20 of these lined up. That way I know I can alternate where I want to put these. I'm going to take all of my pieces of fabric now and I'm going to cut all of these down into 10-inch squares. If you don't have any of these left or any orphan blocks left, just take your scraps and sew a whole bunch together until you come up with at least 10 inches that you can trim out, or to the size that you want to trim out. So you can just build these yourself. Now just go ahead and you're going to cut these out into 10-inch squares. Even though scrappy quilts are my favorite kind of quilts, I just want to use up some of this older stuff that I have so I can start using the newer scraps I'm going to be accumulating. So depending on how many scrappy pieces you want in each row, there's no rhyme or reason. It's just what looks good to you. Make that many squares. After you do that step, you just start lining your squares up. You just can see the different varieties here. It's just going to be a lot of fun. I think this one I'm going to take more of the purple. I can get my scrappy looking blocks really fast by doing it this way. And I get to use up all of these pieces. I'll call that a win-win. I'm going to cut this one right here. So I'm only going to get a little bit of this cream color. And I'm just going to go ahead and give this a quick press. And just remember, my blocks are all very, very wonky because they were just wonky scrap quilts that I was making. Okay, I got another block. And I have some more scraps to add to my scrap pile. I'm just going to line these up so they don't match anything. These won't stick here, so I'm just going to lay this over so I know that I like that look. Try to incorporate these ones into it too. I don't really want them to touch each other too much. Well, I don't want them to touch each other, but I don't want them to be too many in the same area. Okay, so I've got this one already here lined up. This is going to go on this one. This one I can put right here. I have one of these in this row, so I'm going to save this for a different row. Maybe right here. I'm trying to not put the scrappy ones like side by side either. I'm trying to have that alternated, so I'm going by eye at what looks kind of good to me. I've got this scrappy one and I've got this flowered one here that's kind of in the browns. I definitely want to be careful not to put like that here. Put this red here because see, this is going to go down here. It's not going to go there. This will go here. So I'll just start lining them up. You can see how my row went together and I can see that none of them are the same. And I think I'm ready for some green. I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put a green in there. I'll put another green here beside this one. And I think I'm going to put this on the end. So that row is ready to go. When I'm ready for this row, all I'm going to do is I'm going to start picking them up. I'm going to take my top one. I'm just going to pick them up in the order. This is the first one that I picked up, and this will be on the top right now. Take the second one that I picked up, and I'm just going to turn it over on top of the top. I'm going to put my 1/4-inch seam. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. I have so many different seams here, and I just don't want them to come apart. Sometimes they like to come apart at the tops for me, so I always like to just give that a back stitch. Open this up, and I don't need to finger press it or anything right now. After I get the whole row done, then I'll take it over to the iron and press this before I put it on. Taken from my pile, and I'm just lining these up. Back stitch at the beginning and at the end of each row. I'm just going to push the seams. I know I need to push the seams in one direction. I'm going to push this row to my left. I'm also putting this together row by row. I'm not waiting until I get a collection of rows. I'm just walking right over and grabbing and sewing them together. So I know that on the last row, I press the seams the opposite direction, and this row I am pressing in this direction. That way I'll be able to nest those seams nicely. So here's my finished row, and all I'm going to do is lay this on top of this row all the way down, and I'm going to bring this over to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew this all the way down. I know how I press the seams row by row, And also, I just need to remember what was the left and what was the right. I'll put a little piece of tape on like the left, and that way I know always that's my left-hand side, what I've made the row for. It's just a little helpful tip. Start, and then I'm gonna do a back stitch. And now I need to nest these seams. Because I pressed in the opposite directions, you know, that's gonna nest real good there. I'm only gonna pin as I go. I'm not gonna pin all the way down. You can go ahead and nest all of your seams and pin them all at once. I'm just gonna sew and right up to my pin and pull my pin out when I get there. I don't wanna ride over it. While that's there though, I'm gonna get ready for my next seam. I've got those two seams nested. What that means is I've got a seam going this way and I've got a seam going this way. These will just connect. They almost interlock there. See the two seams here? You just push that down with your finger. You hold that and you can put a pin right in there. Right in and pull it right back out that seam. Pull that together. And because I am working with all of these scraps, it can be a little bit confusing because there's so many different areas that have seams. Continue on. Be sure that they're matching. Okay, what we're looking for now is to make sure that our points line up. See here how these two green ones are like touching each other? You just want to be kind of going for that. If they're not, you might want to undo it and try to get them to do it. If you're just beginning and you've matched your seams and they're a little off, I wouldn't worry about it. Especially in a quilt like this, because it's not going to matter because it's so busy. There's so much happening in here. It's not going to matter. I'm not a perfection quilter, so I just do this for fun. So if it's not perfect, I am not usually bothered by this. If you just want to practice putting them together, I'm just showing you, if you pin it, you usually can get it pretty good. I think the key to this, though, is to go back and look. If you're trying to really get these points together, sew one or two, go back, look, and see if you were able to do it. Most all of the quilts that I make, it's not really ever going to matter because I'm a very scrappy quilter and I like doing really easy projects. So that won't bother me at all. Continue to do this down the whole row, and I'm going to give this a back stitch. So all I'm going to do is sew the rows together, and then I'm just going to keep adding row to row to row to row. Here's what it's looking like so far. I'm really loving this quilt. I think these little pops of color just make it look so fun. And even the fabrics that I think that I would never really use, I think look really great in this particular quilt. And by adding the solid color and putting that randomly throughout, I think that just makes it look really nice. I'm just gonna give this whole thing a press now. Your quilt, and I'm gonna go along and I'm going to take my lint brush and I'm just gonna clean up any of the lint. I'm going to have a lot because this is very scrappy, so there's going to be a lot of loose threads or a lot of threads popping out. So I'm just going to go around and I'm going to snip all these as I'm pressing it. I'm going to be getting so many that I know I'm going to need a little container to put them in. It's coming in at about 87.5 by 97. I love how that green just blends everything nicely together. If you haven't seen my channel and you'd like to check it out, I'm a very scrappy quilter and I am a very thrifty quilter. I like things to be done really quickly. I don't like to work on real long, tedious projects. I like to keep things very, very simple. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Remember to keep it simple. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye. Say bye, little Miss Reddy Thready.